Imagine, for a moment, what it must have been like to be a young child in 1910, getting ready to embark on an adventure outside the bustling village of Grass Lake. It is a warm summer day, and you are excited to spend the afternoon shopping in the city or relaxing at the lake. Suddenly, you see it, the interurban car, rattling down the tracks toward you. You smile as it stops in front of you, and your smile only grows wider as you board, knowing that the interurban car is carrying you towards a day of laughter and play. Many children in Grass Lake had days like this because of the interurban railway, a system of transportation once commonplace but now mostly forgotten, buried in the dust of the automobile. It is indeed a lost railway, but it doesn't have to be lost forever. This is the purpose of the Lost Railway Museum, to preserve the history of the interurban through stories, pictures, and artifacts so that everyone can experience the interurban railway for themselves. In order to truly experience the interurban, we first have to understand what the interurban was.
An interurban system is a short line, small system between cities. At that time, of course, the Michigan Central Railway ran from Jackson to Grass Lake to Ann Arbor and all over the country. But because places like Grass Lake didn't have stations where the big line would stop very often, there was a need for a small interurban railway that would transport people between stops between the cities.
Horse and buggy was a primary means of transportation. Roads had not been developed to any degree of suitability at that time. So the interurban allowed people to ride in a relatively smooth and quick way between communities.
I ran across stories of, women going shopping in Detroit and thinking, oh, how was that possible? Thinking trains. This was before I knew much about interurbans. But it was possible because, they ran like every hour and a half. You could get on them, go in, and, come back.
The story of Grass Lake's interurban system begins with a man named W.A. Boland. Boland was an East Coast entrepreneur, a man with experience in interurban systems and a desire to build a new one in southern Michigan. His vision was to build a line so large it could carry passengers across the entire state, from one Great Lake to the other. To accomplish this vision, he teamed up with W.A. Foote, founder of the Jackson Light and Power Company and owner of much of Jackson's electricity. With access to the necessary power, Boland began to make his vision a reality.
Around 1901, they started developing the Boland line from Jackson to Grass Lake. The Jackson line came out of the city of Jackson along Page Avenue. They had a little station at Gray Tower Road. Gray Tower was where Boland had his farm. And then they continued on to Wolf Lake Road and went north to Michigan Avenue in Grass Lake and down through the center of Michigan Avenue in Grass Lake.
Boland later added a line that took passengers to Wolf Lake, a popular getaway destination sporting a casino and outdoor recreation. However, Boland had his sights set beyond Jackson County, and he had only one real obstacle: Hawks Angus, a competing interurban company.
There's lots of stories about the two gangs of workmen battling each other. There's a story about the Boland guys coming in and working all night through the night one time to get their rails and ties laid through Grass Lake before the Hawks Angus guys would get there. There's dozens of stories like that in the newspaper about the clashes between the two companies. It was a good old feud, really.
The two companies eventually staked their claims in southern Michigan. Hawks Angus ran east to Ann Arbor, and Boland ran west and north to Kalamazoo and Lansing. The two lines met in Jackson and Grass Lake, which made Jackson County a hub for interurban transportation. By transferring to different interurban lines, a passenger could get practically anywhere in southern Michigan, from Bay City to Toledo. This system was well loved by passengers, but merely tolerated by the rail companies themselves. Because of the competition caused by two interurban companies occupying the same town, both Boland and Hawks Angus took hits to the bottom line. Bolin also never completed the direct line across the state he had always wanted. Even so, the interurban system in Michigan was a fantastic success, used by thousands across the state. However, the rise of the automobile meant trouble for the interurban.
Cars became very popular. They were very affordable. You could buy a brand new Model T for $200 or less. They started putting in roads, and so people were able to go where they wanted, when they wanted to.
Of course, lots of other things, over speculation, over expansion, grandiose ideas, and probably the Depression probably put the kibosh on it right at the end, but it was declining rapidly at that time.
By the late 1920s, the interurban system was essentially gone, overtaken by more modern transportation. The interurban cars that once carried hundreds of passengers were now simply discarded. Some lucky cars were incorporated into existing buildings or used as the basis of new structures, especially in the Albion area. The repurposing of these cars into homes and businesses had the unintentional effect of preserving them until the present day. This is where the story of the Lost Railway Museum begins, an effort by passionate Grass Lake residents to obtain and restore interurban cars for posterity. Many talented individuals worked together to both find cars relevant to Grass Lake's railway history and bring them back to their original condition, a process that museum visitors can see in action.
The process to do a restoration is do research, identify, if possible, blueprints of the original car, written history on the car, where it was made, how it was being used, locating source of information for parts that are no longer on the car so we can get actual replacements or replicate those parts that are missing.
So what you have to do is basically tear out all the stuff that was added after it left the factory, and you find people put interiors in them that aren't right. You tear out all the wrong stuff. You tear off all the damaged material, and you recreate the damaged material, you fix the damage, and then put everything back in that needs to be in there.
There's woodwork, there's metalwork, sheet metal work, electrical work, painting and decorating, all kinds of individual skills that you need. And we're lucky to have people in our group that have the different skills.
The hours of loving care will be apparent as you walk through the museum floor. But even that floor has a history. The building you are in now is adjacent to property once leased by W.A. Bolin to house power equipment for the interurban line, making this location an ideal spot for the Lost Railway Museum. The structure was in need of a restoration of its own, however.
The building had to be essentially stripped of the interior, extensive renovation to the roof of the building. There was an addition of 38 feet added to the west end of the building. Windows were replaced with solid backing and murals.
Today, the building houses dozens of artifacts, pictures, and of course, the interurban cars themselves. Take your time as you explore each piece. The story of the interurban has much to teach you, if you let it.
It tells the story of that period of time. America was changing a great deal, in that period. Industrialization, new technologies, and I think this is just one example of it.
We appreciate your decision to visit us today. Please enjoy the museum and don't hesitate to ask museum staff if you have any questions. Thanks for supporting Grass Lake's interurban heritage at the Lost Railway Museum.